Once we've done our preparation, then we get into the meeting. If we're chairing the meeting, we should open up with a good, strong opening to let everybody know what we're doing here and what our purpose is, to reinforce the agenda by saying this is what time we have to finish by, these are the topics, and and these are the things that we're going to go through. And if anything's outside of these, we will park them. I'll make a list of things to discuss outside of this meeting, um, and and then at the end, maybe confirm that you're going to circulate the minutes. In some cases, depending on what the meeting's all about, you might even set some rules in the opening phase where you might sit down, get everyone's commitment to some general rules around behaviours and the way we're going to communicate through the meeting. For most workplace meetings, the rules are tied into our code of conduct and code of behavior and our values and culture. So you might just say, look, just a reminder that we're here to talk about some pretty important stuff. Some of this discussion is going to be robust, but at all times we must adhere to our code of conduct and treat each other with respect and courtesy and so forth. And the other point there, which is the first point, which I want to finish on, is my advice is to always start your meetings on time. If particularly with internal meetings, if you tend to wait, so say you're supposed to start at 9 and you wait till say 5 or 10 past 9 till everybody gets there, people are going to get in the habit of being late because they know you won't start without them. If the meeting starts at 9, start at 9. If people miss something at the start, then it's their responsibility to catch up on that. But everybody's time is really precious, and we've got to be respectful of that. Just like we don't like people wasting our time, we don't want to be wasting people's time, particularly who have made the effort to get there on time. I just talked about ground rules. I'm not going to harp too much on this, but just to sort of say, making sure that if required, that we go through them, even if it may be, as I said, just reference back to the organizational codes of behaviors and standards, but making sure that the communication is consistent with good workplace expectations. So we've opened the meeting and now we're getting into it. We're going through the agenda. Topics are being discussed as per the agenda, and people who are taking the lead on those topics are taking those discussions. Our role as the chair is really just to control the meeting to ensure it goes through the agenda, and then we're constantly focused on the purpose and the objective. So our role might be to bring back the discussion to okay, that's a really interesting point. How does that relate back to what we're trying to do here today? So you might do that as the chair, or back to the agenda. Okay, just a reminder, Tony, you've only got 5 minutes left on this, so you'll need to be brief on this. And if there's any outstanding issues, we'll have to carry it over till next time. Or sometimes to say, okay, we've discussed this now for 10 minutes. I think it's time that we make a decision. What's our decision on this? So that's really the role of the chair, to control that discussion and making sure that we're on track to meet our purpose, our objectives, and the outcomes that we've set out. Making sure that everybody's contributing. And just to sort of say, everybody contributing doesn't mean everybody is talking, because some people will be more comfortable talking through the meeting. Other people may not make as many contributions, but will still make important contributions when they do. So as a chair, you're not necessarily looking to hear everybody or listening to hear everybody in the meeting as a contribution, but just to make sure everybody's paying attention. Sometimes you get, and hopefully you'll know this from experience, sometimes you'll get people in your team who will be quite quiet, but really connected with what's going on and will make a contribution. But maybe for some other person in your team, for every 10 words that they use, this person may only use 1 word. But it's still quite an important contribution. So it's really about just making sure everybody's tuned in to what's being discussed. Making sure that ground rules are observed, good behavior, people are communicating respectfully and in an inclusive manner. Making sure that actions are quantified, that is, we've got dates, we've got metrics in place for any decisions that are being made. Making sure that personalities are being managed. So if some people are getting too out of hand, that we rein them back in. And again, that might be look, Tony, that's a really terrific contribution, but I'd really like to hear some of the other team members' views on this. And that's that idea of just managing and harnessing without without calling someone out in front of others and making them embarrassed, but just sort of trying to manage those dynamics a little bit and keeping the climate positive, keeping a good upbeat mood in the discussions. And just something briefly on that, I want to talk about the difference between content and process. So content is the subjects being discussed, the decisions to be made, the agenda items, and so forth. Process is really about making sure everybody is involved, everybody is engaged, making sure that we're brainstorming when we need to brainstorm, making sure that we're making decisions when we need to make decisions, making sure that the group dynamics are working well, and that there's a positive climate going on. And importantly for that content, just as I said, making sure we're bringing it back, always bringing it back to the purpose and the objective, the agenda items, making sure that people are agreeing on what we're saying, and if we can't agree, that we sideline it maybe for another time so that our meeting doesn't get bogged down and go over time. Making sure that we're when we're finishing up, that we're clear in terms of how much of that purpose or objective did we achieve, and making sure that we're keeping notes so that we can circulate minutes at the end of it all. So, what are the key decisions being made? What are the key points being raised? Who's going to do what? When's that going to be done? And that's really about content. And process is really about just making sure that we're following the agenda, making sure that we're moving from decisions to actions, making sure that everybody is contributing and in some way connected to those decisions that we're making. And as I said before, making sure that any over contributing participants are sort of recognize that we recognize their contributions. That was really good contribution, Tony, but I'd like to hear from other people, and making sure that the rules are followed. And I just want to talk a little bit, just finally talk a little bit about managing people in meetings. Is that we always got to be careful when you're chairing a meeting. You got to be careful that you allow people to work to their strengths. So that means that sometimes they're going to be at extremes of their characteristics. So you're going to get extroverted people, just for some crude examples. You're going to get extroverted people who are going to be really talkative. You're going to get introverted people who are going to be much more introspective. You're going to get people who are going to be highly animated. You're going to be people who are really beaten on their agenda about statistics. And as a chair, you've got to manage all that so that everything is working well together. You don't want to be managing people in front of other people if you can avoid it. So you don't want to be putting anyone back in their place, or telling someone off, or making them feel like they've been punished in front of others, because that's just going to one, potentially get you into a fight in front of your team, which never looks great. But two, it's not the best. It's not the best way to manage the climate within the discussion. So whenever possible, you really want to be guiding discussions, recognizing people's strengths, and really trying to draw other people's strengths into it. So as I said before, that's really great, Tony. You've made some really terrific contributions, but I've now got 3 points from you, so I'd be really, which is fantastic, and I really appreciate that, but I'd really be interested in hearing someone else's view. What do you think on that, Sally? So you can really start to manage it like that, and try and recognize people's contributions and their strengths, but then use it as a springboard to draw other people in and so forth. If it does get to a point where you can't rein someone in like that, then the best course of action would be to pause the meeting. Okay, guys, we've been going now for half an hour. Good time. Let's just have a 5-minute stretch break. Everyone get up, have a break, grab a drink, and then you can grab that individual in private. Just say, hey, Tony, can I have a word to you for a minute? Look, I really appreciate your contributions, but, you're just taking over this conversation in terms of ideas, and it's really important that we get everybody else's ideas. I did ask you in that meeting whether you could just hold back for a little bit more. I know you're really keen on this. I really need you to to just give other people an opportunity. So have those conversations in private rather than in public, where you get yourself into potentially an escalating scenario.